Hello and welcome to the property management segment of Deschutes County College. My name is Kristie Bollinger and I'm the property manager for Deschutes County. On our team we also have Ryan Dunning and Emily Pyle, and you'll be hearing from them as well shortly. So what we do here in property management is we manage the county's portfolio of real property. That entails about 630 individual parcels throughout the greater county. First and foremost, we support the Board of County Commissioners' annual goals and objectives. I'm sure you heard more about that during the Commissioners' orientation at the beginning of County College. Through the management of county-owned property, we mitigate risk where possible. That would include like fire fuel mitigation, cleaning up property that maybe somebody dumped garbage on, etc. We evaluate property for long-term holdings or disposition, and what that means is we look at our portfolio and we can make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on selling property, and we also make recommendations on purchasing property. So for example, if a department is growing and they need additional space, we may need to look at purchasing a new building or potentially entering into a long-term lease with an outside landlord. And we also respond to external and internal inquiries and requests. So for example, we might get a phone call or an email from a citizen that's interested in potentially purchasing a property from the county. Maybe they need an easement for whatever reason. Maybe it's a egress easement, like for access. And then we also respond to internal customers, which would be other departments, to help support them in ways that usually relates to space needs. We also initiate or complete property-related transactions other than just dispositions. So for example, easements, property line adjustments, consolidations, partitions. We author and collaborate on a number of memorandum of understandings, intergovernmental agreements. We order appraisals. And I mentioned earlier that we work through leases, and then also we have licenses and permits of entry. We collaborate with a large number of stakeholders. Most other departments throughout the county. We also partner with outside agencies and nonprofits. Contractors on various projects. So for example, I mentioned at the beginning that we only have 3 staff in property management, so we do lean on other departments for assistance. So for example, if we need to fortify a property just to limit access, we might ask the road department to help us place boulders like at unauthorized access points. We also work very closely with county facilities. So for example, if we acquire property through the tax foreclosure process and we need to secure it, we might ask them to put locks on the property, maybe board up windows, things like that. Additionally, we manage 4 funds, and when we do the presentation in person, I can elaborate further on that. As mentioned on the previous slide, we evaluate property for disposition. So what that could look like is we may have a agency partner or a nonprofit partner come to the county and ask if we have any property that might support, let's say, affordable or low-income housing. And so a couple of recent examples of that is the county partnered with Lapine Sun River Habitat for Humanity and provided roughly 5 acres so that they could construct roughly 34 units in the Newberry neighborhood. Another example is we partnered with Foundation for Affordable Housing to provide acreage in Lapine to build multifamily housing to support seniors, veterans, and others in need of affordable and low-income housing. We also complete market transactions. So, for example, we currently have 2 parcels of property totaling 45 to 50 acres in Lapine that are on the market for sale. And then we also manage one-off transactions. So as I mentioned earlier, we might have a citizen come to the county and ask to acquire a piece of property. So we look at that, and then if it qualifies, then we could, to potentially sell it to the individual or the interested party, then we would handle those transactions as well. We also assist in a lot of homeless initiatives. So for example, safe parking, North Juniper Ridge, East Redmond, and Veterans Village. So safe parking, the county leases a couple different pieces of property, one in Bend and one in Redmond, to Mountain View Community Development, where they manage a safe parking program for those in homelessness. We also collaborate with the city of Bend to support the temporary safe stay area at Juniper Ridge. And then we also have provided property in East Redmond to support the Oasis Village project. Another pending project with Mountain View Community Development that will provide about 75 units of permanent supportive housing. And then also the managed camp that we are currently in the process of, we just finalized the design and identified a contractor to build out the managed camp. And then we also provided acreage for the Veterans Village at the public safety campus. So other transactions that we would work on, that we have worked on, is providing property to the city of Lapine so that they could develop and construct a sanitary sewer lift station. And an outcome of that is it will support the Newberry neighborhoods that the county owns 300 plus acres in that area. And so as that is eventually master planned and sold off, this lift station will support that area. We also donated a parcel of property in Lapine Industrial to the city of Lapine so that they could find a partner to build a spec building for incubator businesses. And we also worked with health services, Deschutes County Health Services, to identify property in Redmond to create an adult foster care home. So we closed on that property. It was a duplex in Redmond, and we closed on that earlier in 2025. I mentioned earlier that we also work with departments to determine, like, if they come to us and they need additional space to support staff needs, that we would work with them to potentially lease or in some cases acquire new property. So a couple examples of that is 2 buildings the county purchased up in Redmond on Kingwood, right near the hospital. We also purchased a small house here in Bend off of Lafayette Street, and we also are leasing the Wyatt building over near St. Charles here in Bend, and that is occupied by health services. One of the projects that we have in our future is to provide the county with property and lease inventory project. And basically what that would do is it would provide for better decision-making opportunities. Our goal is to be able to track all of our properties kind of through one enterprise type database. Right now we don't have that function, and so it's just something that we are going to be doing, and I can elaborate more on that when presenting in person. We're also involved in the landfill siting project. So when if you haven't already, you'll be hearing from the Solid Waste Department, and they'll provide more information on that. And then we also work with our forestry department to select properties to complete fire field mitigation. So we do that through We were able to budget some funding annually. We just started doing that more recent years. And we also work with the forester to, they go out and apply for grants. And so some of our recent projects was completing some fire field mitigation in Lapine Industrial, at Juniper Ridge at the temporary safe stay area, and also McGrath Road, which is just basically east of the Bend Airport. The county can acquire property through different methods. That can include direct purchase, which would look like acquiring property from a private owner. So the Kingwood properties that I mentioned earlier would be a good example of this. We could also acquire property by donation. So there might be a citizen that is at retirement age and they have just a few small pieces of property that they may come to the county and ask us to acquire it. So we don't get those very often, but they do sometimes happen. As far as exchange is concerned, there's laws that allow counties and other agencies to exchange property for like value. So we could acquire property that method. Many, many years ago, counties throughout the United States acquired property through land patents from the federal government, and Deschutes County has a few parcels still left that were acquired by land patent. One example is a large parcel up in Redmond, just in East Redmond, and then just north of the airport. It's roughly 1,600 acres. And then also by tax foreclosure. So in the state of Oregon, counties by law are required to take property by tax deed when property taxes are left unpaid. It's a little over 5 years. And then I also just wanted to add that the road department also acquires property for right-of-way purposes, for road improvement projects, and that is something that the road department handles separately. Property management is not involved in that process. So as far as properties that we oversee here in property management, we categorize those generally in kind of three different buckets. So asset property would look like properties acquired through direct purchase, donation, exchange, land patents. And then also tax foreclosed properties, so that's kind of its category of its own. And then we have park designations, so properties that the previous boards may have designated as park designation. That would be kind of in its own separate bucket. And Ryan will talk more about that on a subsequent slide.
My name is Ryan Dunning. I'm a property analyst with Deschutes County Property Management Department. This is property by the numbers. Total inventory, 630 properties. Park designated, 73 properties designated by prior Board of County Commissioners in the 1990s for wildlife and riparian preservation and passive recreation. Some quick highlights. Largest property, 1,670 acres. Smallest property, 0.001 acres. Sliver or strip properties, we have over 100 parcels in inventory. Affordable housing, acres dedicated, 118. Units, 945 affordable housing units, including pending development. Lease management, in-county leases, we have 38 agreements in operation. External leases, we have 9 leases currently in operation. The focus is on balancing conservation, development, and housing needs. On this next slide, auction and tax foreclosed properties. Our last auction was October 7th, 2022. Due to the state of Oregon's moratorium on counties acquiring real property by tax deed because of pending legislative changes, Deschutes County also paused auctions to provide time for legislation and changes to law that affect proceeds from the sale of tax foreclosed properties. Here are some highlights on the 2022 auction. Number of properties sold, 10. We had gross proceeds of $700,000, 50 people in attendance, 15 staff and volunteers. Our fiscal year 24 actual expenses of $28,000, fiscal year 25 $28,000, and our budgeted expenses for fiscal year 2026 at $143,000. That includes $22,000 in contingency. This next slide, we see a tax foreclosed property in Lapine. In January 2020, Deschutes County acquired this 1.02 acre tax foreclosed property. The site faced several challenges. Solid waste. The property required comprehensive cleanup efforts, including biohazard remediation. Structures. Various outdoor structures were present, necessitating substantial rehabilitation or removal. Unauthorized occupants. The removal of unauthorized individuals was conducted with the support of local enforcement agencies, and a collaborative effort on cleanup. A concentrated effort costing around $10,000 was implemented through the collaboration with County Council, Sheriff's Office, Code Enforcement, Facilities Management, and contractors. The property was ultimately sold at the 2021 auction with a winning bid of $128,000, reflecting successful remediation and asset recovery.
Hello, I am Emily Pyle. I am the property specialist here at the county. I will talk briefly about some examples of county asset properties over the next 4 slides. The first slide here shows an example of a county-owned asset property in the Lapine industrial area. In 1980, the county exchanged land with BLM and the city of Lapine. These 440 acres became known as the Lapine Industrial Area. The land patent, pursuant to the Act of October 21, 1976, allowed for an exchange of land when it is determined that the public interest will be served by the exchange. Public interest was defined as considering the needs of the state and local people, including needs for lands for the economy and community expansion. The city of Lapine and Deschutes County entered into an intergovernmental agreement to memorialize the city and county's roles related to Lapine industrial property. Next slide shows another example of an asset property that the county sold to Central Oregon Regional Housing Authority, doing business as Housing Works. Housing Works is the largest affordable housing provider in Central Oregon. In 2022, the county sold 1.14 acres to Housing Works, which allowed for a future opportunity to provide 30 additional affordable housing units, as well as provide a future clinical space with Mosaic Medical to help those vulnerable populations needing quick access to services. This slide shows a county-owned asset property located off Simpson Avenue in Bend. In 2021, the Board of County Commissioners directed staff to issue a request for proposals, RFP, for the disposition and development of this 7.12 acre property for affordable housing. 5 proposals resulted from the RFP process. And in 2022, the county selected the Housing Works proposal. In 2023, the county sold the property to Central Oregon Regional Housing Authority, doing business at Housing Works. And subsequently, a portion of the property has since been conveyed to Rooted Homes. This disposition of county-owned property has provided the future opportunity for the development of 99 affordable housing units that will be rented or sold to households with lower incomes in the Bend-Redmond area in Deschutes County for the next 60 years. This last slide shows a county-owned asset property located off Drafter Road in Lapine. In April of 2025, the 3 lots were sold to Foundation for Affordable Housing, Inc. for a total of $500,000. The total acreage of the 3 lots is 3.27 acres. Foundation for Affordable Housing, Inc. creates, acquires, and manages affordable housing communities. At this location on Drafter Road, Foundation for Affordable Housing will provide plus or minus 99 units for families, veterans, and seniors.